noticed a recurring theme, and we want to address it directly. And this may be where we step on some people's toes, but we don't mean to. This is all done with love. Like, we really are just talking through it business owner to business owner, because we've been in your shoes and we've tried to rely on other people to help us out of a hole. We want to encourage everyone to maximize the resources that they have because you've invested in them. These are not cheap coaching programs. These are any of the ones that you sign up for, whatever they may be, a coaching program, a class, a book, use them. There's no sense in doing it if you're not going to implement it. All right, welcome back to Our Business Shenanigans. If you missed the first episode, I need you to stop what you're doing immediately, go back and watch it, because we introduced ourselves, shared our business chaos, and set the stage for what the podcast is all about. But today, we're going to turn things up a notch.
Today, we're diving into two things. One, how Jen and I went from business acquaintances to ride or die partners. And two, why people love to ask for help but never actually take action on it. And spoiler alert, if you've ever bought a course, downloaded a freebie, or asked for business advice but never did anything with it, consider this episode your official call out.
Yep, that's your disclaimer right at the beginning. But before we get into it, make sure that you subscribe so that you don't miss out on future episodes. We're everywhere: Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Facebook, all over the place. And if you love what you hear, leave us a review. Unless you're just planning on thinking about it and not actually doing it, like watching the modules.
All right. So before we dig in, let's go ahead and talk about the first impressions. How do we become business besties?
Well, I think that we talked about a little bit on the last episode how we met through business. We met through coaching programs and cleaning business Facebook groups, and then just kind of connected after that. We met a few times at the coaching events and spent time together. But then it escalated like really quickly, I'd say. We got pretty personal. About a year ago in January, we went to a retreat together in Clearwater, and we got an Airbnb. This also ties into the Scientology almost getting kidnapped, but we're not going to tell that story yet. But we got an Airbnb with a couple of our friends, and we quickly realized we didn't have enough beds for everybody. So Nicole and I actually had to share a bed, and one of our friends kept saying, "You better not get her pregnant. You better not get her pregnant." And lo and behold, Nicole gets pregnant.
You dropped me off at the airport and I instantly ran, and I had to go to the bathroom, and the way that I got sick, I knew. I was like, I'm pregnant. That was...
And you're welcome. And now I have a son in Virginia that I never get to see.
It's an ongoing joke. I'm sure my husband doesn't appreciate it, but yes, so it is an ongoing joke that Jen and I shared a bed and then I ended up pregnant. And it's funny because I have a 16-year-old and now I have a baby that's 6 months old. So I reset the 18-year-old clock.
Yeah. And I joke all the time that I'm going to be that cool, distant baby daddy, and I'm going to take Luke and spoil him at Disney World and just send him home where you have to deal with him and discipline him and all that stuff. I'm just going to be the fun second parent.
Yes. And we've also grown so close that last year when I got married, it's almost been a year. Our anniversary's coming up, but Jen was one of my bridesmaids.
Yeah, it was such a good day.
Yeah, it was. And I was super grateful. Her husband came and he helped set up and take down. He earned his Pinterest badge.
Mm-hmm.
So that was fun. I think that's kind of when I hit it off with your husband too, because he's such a great guy. Y'all are definitely two peas in a pod.
Yeah. So the best thing about him is that you'll hear my story eventually, but we've been together, I think, literally forever. But it doesn't matter who's in my life. If you're my people, you're his people. So if you're his people, he protects you, he takes care of you, he does whatever he can for you. So it's a pretty amazing guy.
All right, so now let's dive into some of our bonding moments. So I wanted to kind of touch on a moment where we really had each other's backs. And I think what really helped grow my love and respect for Jen as a business owner and a friend is I was going through a really low place in my business, probably the lowest place I've been in since I started. I had a mutiny essentially in my business.
It was bad.
Yeah. And that'll be on a later episode where I think that's one of our next episodes coming up, but we'll be diving into what happens when staff goes wrong. But I was really leaning into Jen and talking to her, and she's just this bundle of joy. And she invited me to a retreat in Tennessee with a few other cleaning business owners. And I found that not only did I make lasting friendships at that retreat, but I also fell in love with my business again. So that's what we mean when we say that we've learned how to laugh and have joy in the midst of the storms.
Yeah, for sure. And that was a big storm for you. I know that's going to be a really good episode when we get to that one. For me, obviously, I really felt a connection with you at that retreat, but I don't know, it was probably wasn't even 6 months after that. I had a huge issue that a lot of us business owners don't even think about. If you, in Florida at least, if you have 4 employees or more, you have to have workers' comp. And I always relied on my insurance agent to take care of that for me. And I had switched insurance agents. And so for a year, no matter how much I checked up with him, he kept saying everything was fine. We don't need to do anything. Well, then fast forward to the end of the year, which for me was in July, I think. And we got hit with an audit that we didn't pay anywhere near enough. And I remember calling or voice memoing. We do a lot of voice memos on Facebook Messenger and just crying, saying, I don't know how to handle this situation. I don't know what I'm going to do. Where do I even start? And Nicole really talked me off the ledge. And it was nice because it was never like shame of, oh my gosh, how could you let that happen? Why weren't you paying attention to workers' comp or anything like that? She was just, all right, here's what we're going to do. Let's talk through this. How do we move to the next step? And what does that look like? So I can't even explain how much I appreciated that.
Yeah, I definitely went into action mode. Like, all right, this is done. So how do we solve it? Like, what do we do now? Right? It is what it is.
Right, exactly. So today we're going to be talking about, have you watched the modules? And if you've been in any kind of coaching program, there's videos and things like that. So we're going to start off with maybe a funny story about a time we didn't watch the modules and we just tried to either one, do it our own way or asked for advice and didn't really listen anyway.
I can tell you a time. Well, so when I first signed up with the coaching program, I watched like a little bit and I was like, this is overwhelming. And I stepped back, but like I implemented a little bit. Like I had contractors and then I switched to employees and then I adopted the apron, like little things like that. But I didn't finish or like dive in far enough that I didn't get to the culture part. Right. So didn't get there. And so my business was still in shambles. And then it wasn't, I was in it for almost a year before I actually was like, all right, I'm going to take this serious. And then once I watched everything, I had like this epiphany of like, whoa, right? And that's when things really started to shift. But I didn't just watch them, I implemented them.
Well, and for me, it was when I was going through the coaching program that I was a part of it teaches you how to pay properly in our field for the cleaning business industry. And I was like, oh, this is easy. I'm just going to come up with some numbers. But literally in that module, it tells you how to come up with those numbers so that you are not going in the hole, right? And so I watched it and I'm like, oh yeah, I just come up with percentages. It's fine. It's fine. Not a big deal. And so I just picked some numbers and that was all I did with it. I didn't actually do like the calculator to figure out what it was. And so 6 months later, I'm going, yeah, this isn't right. I have to adjust this, and went back and watched it and go, well, that's why, because there's a whole process to it. It's not just one little piece of it that we look at and run with.
Yeah, that sounds like chaos.
It was, right. So have you ever had anybody ask you for advice? You pour your heart out into them and they completely ignore it?
Or worse, someone asked a question that was literally answered in all the training that they watched.
Yeah. So a lot of common excuses people make are, I don't have time. I already know this. I'll go back later and do it. Spoiler alert, you won't. Right. If you don't set the time to do it, it's always going to be there to get back to. There's always going to be some fire to put out. There's always going to be something that's more urgent that you have to do. But it's so important, the information in those modules, whichever modules they are, whether you're part of our coaching groups or any of the millions of them that are out there.
Yeah, and we're both part of multiple coaching groups. We both use a robust CRM. So, those are both significant investments. And part of these investments comes with access to a wealth of knowledge. They both come with hours of modules, detailed documents, SOPs, weekly Zoom calls, the works, everything you need.
Right. But we've noticed a recurring theme and we want to address it directly. And this may be where we step on some people's toes, but we don't mean to. This is all done with love. Like, we really are just talking through it business owner to business owner, because we've been in your shoes and we've tried to rely on other people to help us out of a hole. We want to encourage everyone to maximize the resources that they have because you've invested in them. These are not cheap coaching programs. These are any of the ones that you sign up for, whatever they may be, a coaching program, a class, a book, use them. There's no sense in doing it if you're not going to implement it.
Yes. And do you want to call ourselves out a little bit more? Like, what's one time we completely ignored advice and later regretted it?
Yeah, I think you've got a good one on this, right?
Yes. So in home estimates, it was determined. I was like, no, I need to see it in person. And I realized how much time, how much gas I was wasting. I can't tell you how many, like that final month of when I was doing them, it was like in the back of my mind the whole time, just hearing everybody say, you can quote over the phone. And I was like, no, I want to see it in person. I want to build that relationship, all of the things. But then every time I went to a house and I was ghosted, like the person wasn't there or you name it, it was something that I could have weeded out on the phone. I was really beating myself up. I mean, one time I drove an hour to go to
My
this,
gosh.
yes, to go to a house and the woman like was asleep. It was the time she requested. And I think that's when I was like, I'm done. And so what I did
Yeah.
was I took my pricing scale with me for a few weeks while I was doing these in-home estimates. And I realized my pricing scale said exactly what I was quoting. Like, I think there was like one job in that whole month that I quoted that I realized it could have been adjusted a little bit, but like how much gas, how much time. So, in home estimates, if we're doing them, would require a whole separate position in the office, right?
Right.
If the owner's not doing it, which means your overhead is larger, which means you have to up your pricing even more. I think our clients really appreciate having a lower rate and the pricing is going to be the same regardless, right? Very
Right.
rarely is it outside of that if you're honest about the questions that we're asking. So I think that that was definitely a hard lesson. It was an expensive lesson if you count all the gas and all the time that I wasted, because what is my hourly rate?
Right.
So
Exactly.
what do I think I'm worth to pay myself? That's how much I paid to go do these estimates that I could have did the first time they called.
Well, not to mention all the time it takes you away from the office and doing the things that you need to be doing that only you can do, you know? So going out there and wasting that time, it's not just a waste of your money, it's a waste of your resources. Your role in the company is so much bigger than just going out. And not that that's not important, but just going out and doing estimates, right?
Absolutely. And let's not forget that in all of that, the only reason why I succeed at it today doing quotes over the phone is because I watched the modules and I got the resources. I knew how to price. I didn't make up some chart. I knew our production rates and I knew how to find our production rate. I knew how to implement it because I watched the modules.
I'm sensing a theme. Should we be watching the modules? I don't understand.
It's funny because I always have joked, Jen and I, it's so funny. There's so many businesses out there that just truly don't belong in business, whether it's like a bookkeeping company, a SEO company,
My
doesn't
gosh.
matter, but they just don't belong in business. So we joke all the time that like what little bit I know about bookkeeping, because it's not too much, like at all, but I'm convinced that I could start my own bookkeeping business and just call it spicy bookkeeping,
Yeah,
right?
for everything, spicy SEO, spicy,
Yes.
Google ads, whatever.
Spicy coaching, where I literally have people pay me hundreds of dollars for an hour for us to just sit and watch a screen share of the modules. Like, I'm
Just
okay
to
with
be
that.
there, just to be their accountability partner. But I think that that's it for so many people, is that there's so much going on. Like, I don't fault them. There are days that I am in the thick of it here and I am in the weeds and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know. There's no way I can fit anything else into my day. I'm so overwhelmed, I'm so overstimulated." So I get it. I really do. But I think sometimes we crave being busy over being productive. So, all of that crazy and busy that you're dealing with that is so overwhelming and you can't deal with it, would it be solved by watching one of the modules and fixing that problem?
Yes, but also learning without implementation is no
Correct.
results, right?
Correct. Yep.
You can't sit there and
Yep.
just hoard all this information and do absolutely nothing with it. It's actually
Right.
applying it.
Right. Well, and I always equate any of this stuff to like going like a gym. I can join a gym and never go. Guess what? I'm not going to get in shape. I'm not going to lose weight. I'm not going to be able to run faster. But if I join a gym and I actually show up and I do the work and I put in everything, 6 months from now, I'm going to be a different person. I'm going to feel better. I'm going to look better. I'm going to have more, physical energy and everything. Same thing goes with the modules on anything. We get modules with everything we do now, with our CRM, with our recruiting software, with our coaching programs, with our marketing programs. There are modules for everything. Is it overwhelming? Absolutely. But what do? You take it step by step.
We know life gets busy, but this program is a commitment, and the modules are the foundation. Whatever program you're in, even if it's a book about leadership, right? It doesn't matter what resources you're using, those are the foundation that you're building on.
Absolutely. And you've spent the money, you've already invested in it. You've done what most people consider the hardest part, because especially if it's a coaching program, some of these coaching programs are thousands and thousands of dollars. Why are you spending that and not diving in and digesting everything? I was fortunate enough, I say fortunate enough, that when I joined the big coaching group that we're a part of, I had broken my collarbone, so I couldn't go back to work. So I was kind of stuck only focusing on these, so I could really dive in. And I know that not everybody is afforded that luxury of breaking their collarbones and getting out of the field, but it really made the difference because it's a lot. It's a lot of your time, your energy, and your funds to just have it sit there and do nothing with it.
Yes. And have you ever noticed that there is a big difference between people that are growing and that stay stuck? Both of our problems are the same, but they're just different levels, right? So if I'm sitting there and I'm harping on the same issue and say 12 months later, or I'm harping on an issue and 12 months later, I'm harping on the same issue. When do we need to stop and kind of self reflect? Like, there has to be an answer for this, because I think I already proved to myself I can do bad all by myself. That I don't, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to seek wisdom. The wise seek wisdom. So,
Absolutely. Well, and it's not just about acknowledging that you need help. There's no way going into any business that you know everything that there is to know about that business.
yes, I do.
No, you don't. Because, and I harp on this a lot. I'll probably say it a million times throughout each of these podcasts, but most people who start small businesses start a small business because they're good at a thing. I was good at cleaning. It escalated into a business. Somebody was good at plumbing. They decided that, hey, I'll just do it on my own. Whatever the case may be, we usually start something because we're good at it. You know what I was not good at?
Business.
Business. Right. I didn't know how to do any of that stuff. And even people who go to college for business degrees come out and go, I wasn't taught any of this stuff with my business degree. So that's why we have to seek out knowledges or not knowledges. Clearly, I'm super knowledgeable. I seek out all of the knowledges, but it's very hard when you've got someone like that you were just talking about, that 12 months later is dealing with the same problem, and you try to invest time in them, and you try to, help them out the best you can, point them to the modules, point them to things that work for you, and still having not everybody, but that group of people that come back and go, well, but that won't work for me. That won't work for me.
What you're doing, is it working?
Right.
So
right.
is it fear? Is it fear based? Maybe people are, they don't adjust with change, which is fine.
I think
if you don't adjust to change, you have to be okay staying in the same place a year from now that you're in now.
Right. Right. But I think that part of it is that people are comfortable with their own uncomfortability. They know what this uncomfortable feels like. If they change it, they don't know what that uncomfortable feels like. So that might be a whole different bucket of uncomfortable that I now have to unpack. This uncomfort I'm comfortable with because I know I'm going to have employee chaos. But if I do that, what if they all mutiny and they leave? At least right now I've got people cleaning. I'm not saying that's the right answer, but I think that sometimes that's how people approach it, not even realizing it.
Yes, and it's especially challenging when we encounter questions that are directly answered in the training materials that we all have. If I'm honest, it feels like we're being asked to provide a Cliff Notes version of hours of content, hours of investing in myself. If we made the same investment, why? I just don't feel, I'm going to say this as nicely as I can. I don't feel that it is fair for you to ask me, like if you watched it and you implemented it and you have a question, sure, ask that question, right?
Right.
But if you are refusing to acknowledge the fact that we are given the same tools and you are not applying them, when you are asking me instead of utilizing and diving into that, I feel like you are telling me that your time is more valuable than mine. And that this is something that I hold dear to my heart, this subject, because I'm famous for saying this is in the modules. I cannot count whether that's on like a CRM page, coaching page, wherever you see all these different, questions and things. And it's like, it's not even, I'm really working on my words here. This is fun. This is just really a topic that I hold really dear to my heart. We are given the same tools. So if somebody and I joined a program at the same exact time, and 4 years down the road, my business has doubled and yours has stayed the same, why? What happened? Now, I don't want to say it's luck, but I want to say I implemented. Now, some people are slower, some people are faster. That's okay. But
Right.
don't sit there and acknowledge that we're given the same tools, but then ask me to spend even more. I took the time to invest in me. I took the time to invest in my business. So it's not fair for my time to be taken away to constantly be explaining myself to people given the same opportunity.
Well, and because ultimately, when you say it's taking time away from you because you watch the modules, when you went through all of those modules, whichever ones they were, that took time away from your family. That took time away from your business. That took time away from you doing things that fill you up. That took time away from you just resting because you were learning. So while, yes, I love helping people. You know that. I love mentoring people. I love coaching people. It's one of my passions. But you don't realize how exhausting it is at the end of the day sometimes when you've had 6 or 7 people reach out, all asking things that could have been answered in the module somewhere, or, on a coaching call, or diving back into something else. And at the end of the day, I'm going, I spent the entire day on phone calls away from my business, away from my family, away from doing things that I needed to do to help all of these other people. Again, I absolutely love doing it, but understanding and recognizing that that's taking time away from us too. Like when we answer your calls, not say, gosh, it sounds like I don't want it to sound high, like I'm high and mighty or anything like that. Like, oh my gosh, I'm blessing you with my time because I answered your call. But if I'm carving out that time, respect that time enough to then utilize what we've talked about.
Yes, I cannot tell you how many times I'll think of a specific situation. I spent about an hour of my time voice memoing, explaining something to someone for about an hour, and it was pretty deep. And then I saw the topic come up like 3 or 4 times, and I want to say it was like, 6 months later, the same person asked me, do you have time to jump on a call later? I've already given you about an hour worth of my time. There are people that charge hundreds of dollars for that. Let me be clear. And I've already broken it down for you, right? And to be fair, it's really hard to give a quick answer when there are complex topics that take time to understand and that are meant to be done in a certain order. I can't tell you to do X, Y, and Z, but it needs to be, ZYX, right? I
Yeah.
don't know your specific situation through and through. I just know what little information you're providing me in the 5 minutes that we're chatting.
Right. Well, because I could call you and say, my gosh, I am. Let me think of something we've just dealt with. We decided to switch to Zoom interviews, right? You don't know that. I call you up and go, oh my gosh, we had a terrible show rate for our interviews. I just don't know what to do. Teach me how you did it, or tell me how you do your interviews. Well, how you do your interviews and how we do our interviews are completely separate. So I was taught this way, and we've got videos and things like that through our recruiting program. There are portions in there that show you how to do Zoom interviews. But if I just call you and there's no background, there's no nothing else, how do you build on that and give me accurate advice?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think that I could never sustain my business. We would not be where we are now if I was operating solely on the Cliff Notes version of everything that I have learned along the way. If I didn't actually invest the time and the time watching or learning or reading and the time implementing, if I didn't go through that experience and I was just going off a Cliff Note version, imagine the chaos that's going to come from that.
Right. Well, and another good example, going back to when I was talking about how I didn't figure out my labor correct, right? If I called you up and said, tell me what to pay my employees, what do I pay them? What's a good living wage? I have no context to that. What are you charging? Are you pricing right? Like, are you profitable now? What are all of the other things that go along with it? There's so many questions. And I've also had people get aggravated with me when they ask me a question and I return it with like 10 other questions, because I can't give you a direction to go in if I don't have all of that background. And if you don't want to give me all of that background, then I can't help you.
Yeah, it's the same. I love that you brought that up because I had someone that we were kind of breaking down some numbers, and, I was really invested in this conversation. And then like halfway through, come to find out the numbers are actually different than what was given to me at first. So it was like, everything I just told you it's not a good, we got to go back to the basics. We got to go back to the basics, because the information I was provided at the beginning of the conversation is how I based this conversation. And now that you've given me new information saying, oh, actually it's this, the conversation has to go a completely different way because you're way in the red, So,
right.
So there's a lot that has to go into it, but I think that it's only fair that we are doing our homework and applying what we can, and then learning and building off of that. Somewhat of the foundation, I can't hand you the foundation. I can't hand that to you, right? So you have to build what works for you, what systems and processes work for you. But just know, if you're building your own systems and processes, 50-50, it might work, it might not, but just know that everything within your business ties together. Example of that, like, I love that you talked about paying employees. I could pay my employees $30 an hour. It doesn't matter if the culture isn't there to back it. So again, giving you the Cliff Notes version of one subject doesn't solve the internal issues that go along with that. So that's why there might be 10 questions to ask that coincide with this. If you're having an issue retaining staff, it's probably not just the pay.
Correct. Right. You know what one of my favorite questions is when when anybody approaches me and says, hey, either I watched this module and I think I get it, but I don't quite understand it. Can you walk me through it? I love that. Like, I love that they've taken the time. I've watched it. I'm not grasping it. How do you do this? Or they bring a problem to me and they say, hey, I'm really going through this right now. Here are all the things that I tried. I know that this module says something about this, but it's not really clear. Can we talk through that? Can we figure that out? What works, what has worked for you guys? Where it doesn't just feel like somebody's coming to me and just And my second favorite question is when somebody comes to me and says, you know what, I've got this problem and I've tried this, this, and this, and I saw this in the modules. I don't think it applies exactly. So can you walk me through how it's worked in your company? Or can you tell me what you guys do in this situation? Because I've not been able to find a direct answer. I love that they have already thought it out before they came to me, as opposed to coming to me and just saying, how do I do this? What do I do with this? How do you do this? Like, put some energy and effort into it as well, so that I know what you've tried, because I don't want to sit here and spend 20 minutes explaining something to you and you're like, oh, no, I've already tried that. Okay, well, if I had known that going in, we would have gone a different route,
Yeah. And even I'm trying to think of examples, because I love learning from examples, real life scenarios. And so like the CRM that I use, they have thousands of SOPs on how to operate the system. I mean, thousands. You literally, the help page, you can type a subject. I want to say my first 3 months on this system, I swear I can use the system better than some of the people that work there. But
100%.
Not to toot my own horn, I learned because I played around with it, right? But the best way I learned was I never started work in a day without the help page in the background. And anytime I had a question, I went over there. I self-taught myself using the information that they provided. So it's almost like when people will sometimes ask a question or what have you, I'm very passionate about helping them with that system, because my brain just gets the way that it's wired now.
Well, and because it's valuable and we pay so much for it, you want to utilize all the things that are there. And that's what you're doing.
But sometimes the question that was typed out, you could have typed that in the help page and received way more detailed information that you're going to get from me. And I actually love now, if you go to submit a ticket, I had to submit a ticket last week. And I went to submit a ticket and I typed in my issue. I noticed the screen looks different. And the first thing it does is it prompts this page, and it's like, do any of these solve your problem? If not, you can chat with the representative or whatever, submit a ticket. But I love that they added that filter. It's the same as, compare it to a business having a receptionist, right? We get so many calls that are solicitation calls, you name it. If I had to answer all of those, I would be losing my mind. But if we had a receptionist filtering through them and passing along the important ones, because let's be honest, I don't want my CRM costs to go up because they need to hire more overhead to answer all these questions that they've already answered in all the training material. Don't do that to me, because if I have to pay more for it, I'm going to lose it.
But not only that, but think about it in your office setting. Like if as a business owner, if you had somebody in your office who was constantly asking you a question every single time they had an issue, or constantly coming back and asking the same question over and over again, at some point you sit back and you go, have you listened to anything that I've said? Are you following the SOP? Did you write down the answers that we had before? Like in our office now, the rule is if you ask me a question that I have to answer, now it's your job to write that SOP. Because if you've asked it, somebody else is going to ask that question. So when you do reach out for help, whether it's with us or any of the coaches, take the time to make the notes or go back and watch the replay of that coaching session so that you can really implement it and use it in your own learning so that you aren't asking that coach the same exact question in 30 days when you get on the call with them again.
Yes. And everyone's time is valuable. We invest in different programs. We are investing in our future. That includes dedicating time to actually learning and implementing the material. So when someone asks for a summary of, hours of my work, it implies that their time is more valuable than mine. And like I said, I feel like that's disrespectful.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree. I really feel like this podcast is going to step on toes.
I'm not trying to be abrasive. I'm trying to be nice.
And that's not it. Like the bottom line to this whole show, this episode is we want you to get your money's worth out of whatever you have paid for. Whether it's a coaching program, whether it's a book that you have purchased, whether it is, one-on-one time you've had with somebody, you have already paid for that. Get the most out of it. Like she said, with our CRM, there are thousands of hours on how to do that. Our recruiting software, hundreds of hours of training on how to interview, how to, set up or what to look for in interviews, how to onboard even. Like all of that stuff is laid out for us, but it's not valuable at all if you're not going to use it.
Yeah. And being stuck in a consume but never act cycle, it's got to be miserable.
Yeah. Well, again, I think it goes back to, I remember when I first started implementing everything and it was just me looking at my husband and going, oh my gosh, how am I going to do all of this stuff? This is a lot. Like I said, I was fortunate enough to have a broken collarbone, so I wasn't actually in the field, but so I could actually work on that stuff. When you're in the field and you're still out cleaning or doing the plumbing or doing whatever that technician position is, and you have to come home and now also learn, I know it's exhausting and I am not taking away from that at all. And I don't want you to feel discouraged, like, oh, nobody wants to help us because we're asking questions. That's not at all what we're saying. And I hope my biggest hope is that you do not walk away from this episode thinking, well, they don't want to help anybody, because that's not the case. It could not be farther from the truth. We absolutely love helping people. What is frustrating and annoying is when it's the same questions over and over and over again.
Especially from the same person.
Right. And we're not moving past that, or it's that shutdown. I don't do well with people who ask for advice or want to talk through a problem, and I share things that have worked for me, or I share things that are going well, and they just shut down. Nope, that's not how we do it. Nope. Well, then you're right. Nobody's going to get through to you. It doesn't matter if it's me or a high dollar coach or whatever. If you're not a little bit open-minded about being able to change the way you're doing things, then no amount of coaching is going to help. You have to at some point step back and go, maybe I am the problem. I 100% know I was the problem back, before I started any sort of coaching programs or doing any of this stuff. It was me. I was not paying well. I didn't know how to have employee culture. I didn't know how to do the things. Nobody ever trained me. Now we've been given those opportunities, or you can seek out those opportunities. So that's, at some point, it's not an excuse anymore.
Yeah. And you know how I respond to that. So if anybody asks me, I help anybody that reaches out to me, like even local competitors, you name it. Like that's okay. Like I love collaborating, right? I can learn from anyone. Everyone that I have encountered has something valuable that I can learn from. But when someone goes into that shutdown mode, I've noticed when you're hitting a wall, it's almost like my response is I look at them and say, you're right. It's not going to work. You're right. You're stuck. There's really nothing you can do to change it, because that's literally what you're saying over and over. And then it's kind of like, it gives them that like aha moment, like, oh my gosh, I'm the problem. Or not that you're the problem, but what you're doing is the problem. There is a way out. But I do also want to really add emphasis that I applaud anyone that does reach out, that does seek wisdom, that does want a better understanding, because that's better than staying on the hamster wheel and never saying anything at all. But it also comes with the homework. Don't just ask a question, get a bunch of answers, and just leave it at that, because just reading it or hearing it doesn't solve your problem. So, what is a way that people could actually use what they learn?
So I think first and foremost, like making it a priority. Just like you would set an appointment to go do a walkthrough on a house back in the day, or you would set an appointment to go have a networking lunch, or you would set an appointment to go clean somebody's house. In our case, set an appointment with yourself that nobody gets to interrupt. You know, if you've got kids and you take kids to school in the morning, after you drop them off, take an out half hour, even if that's all you have, sit in your car and dig into a module, or read half hour of reading your book, or whatever it is. But dedicate that time blocking, whatever you want to call it, to investing in your business and in yourself by actually doing the training.
Yeah, and if you're anything like me, I thrive on deadlines. So just give yourself a deadline. Like, say, I'm going to have this done by this day, or what have you. And you can apply one takeaway immediately after learning something new. You don't have to implement everything, but just implement one thing.
And can I say, you may implement something now, and then 6 months from now, you go and rewatch that same module and you go, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that. I missed that the first time, because you weren't in a place to take that in yet. You weren't in a place where you needed that, which is also what's hard about giving advice. If somebody comes and talks to you, is they might not be ready for that piece of advice. They might not be ready for that portion of the module. They needed to hear that other thing first and take care of that. But like Nicole said, if you need accountability, set yourself a deadline. And you know what? I will be the first of all of my friends who are watching. I'll be your accountability partner. I love that. I love that you're wanting to invest in yourself. If you say, you know what, I want you to hold me accountable by Friday. I want to have watched, 3 new modules, whatever the case may be. Absolutely. I'll reach out to you midweek. I'll reach out to you on Friday. I'll put reminders in my phone to make sure that you're on topic, or that you're on task, because it's so much more freeing when you have the knowledge and you can act in confidence, as opposed to acting in, okay, I hope this works, or I hope this will be okay.
Yeah, the modules aren't just theory. They're practical, actionable steps that can transform your life and your business.
You're going to see real results. It's not going to be just something that, well, I take that back. If you're implementing and you're taking the steps, you're going to see real results. There's no reason why you wouldn't. It's going to get better. Things are going to get better.
Yep. And it's all there to help you succeed. And we want to see everyone in whatever program or resource that you are in, we want to see you succeed in that.
Right. It's like the old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Take it one module at a time. Take it a half hour at a time. Take it 5 minutes at a time. Just start doing something. But I will say, it needs to be uninterrupted. Like if you're taking a 30-minute block in the morning where you're going to start diving into the modules or whatever it is, then that needs to be 30 minutes where your phone is on silent, the notifications are turned off, everything, so that you can fully digest what you're hearing.
And if you're feeling overwhelmed, take a break. Take notes, create summaries, rewatch sections as needed, reread that page or process, whatever that looks like for you, so you can digest. So after you do the homework, it's okay to ask more questions. That's okay.
Absolutely.
So I really want to put emphasis on, I don't mind helping the people that have helped themselves.
Right. Well, and I would even like to go farther to say, you're going to have questions after the modules sometimes. Like, oh, wait, well, how do I do that if I'm not doing this? Well, you're right. You've got to get that in order first before you move on to the next thing. So you're going to have questions. And at that point, absolutely reach out. Like we've said a million times, I don't want anybody to take away from this podcast. Don't ask for help or thinking that we think any kind of way or anything like that. We really want the best for you guys because we know how hard it is to run a small business.
Yeah, and we were on a call yesterday with Beth, and I highlighted that with Beth, that I've noticed that, there's this specific program for this specific thing, and the people that haven't, implemented that or what have you, what ends up happening is you'll see that they have tons of chaos and they have tons of questions about that chaos. Sometimes you read a question and you're like, God, it takes you back, like, man, I haven't been through that in 5 years or whatever, right? And it's like, it's humbling because it takes you back to where you were reading that. But then you also realize I don't have these problems because I made this investment and I implemented it, with Beth's Deep Clean Specialist program. So
Yeah. No, that's an amazing program. I mean, I think one of the things that we talked about is I can't remember how many times prior to that it'd be Friday evening and I would look at the schedule and I'd go, "Oh my gosh, why are my technicians still working? It's 6:30 on a Friday." I had no idea. Part of that program is that whole process so that that doesn't happen. So you don't have techs working past 5 o'clock on Friday. All of the steps are in place. But if you just look at it and go, "Oh yeah, I I get the gist of it. We just need to have people that are responsible for the job, right?" Yeah, so it'll be on them. But what does that mean? What kind of guidance are you giving them? You're failing your employees if you're not digging into it further.
another thing is it's not really fair if I make this investment. So we've made these great investments, right? In ourselves, in our businesses. And it's not fair when someone that didn't make that same investment is trying to seek my knowledge, whether that's a specific, coaching program or, even one of the add-ons or whatever, right? Say the Deep Clean Specialist program. It's not fair for you to essentially pick my brain, get all these cliff notes of this program, but you're not investing in yourself for that. That's like my team coming and giving you a clean house, but you didn't pay us for it.
Yeah, so I had that situation with somebody years ago, right after I joined the big program that we're in, and they kept texting me, well, can't you just tell me this? Can't you just tell me that? No, I can't tell you that. Do you know why? Because everybody in that program has paid, depending on how long they've been in, tens of thousands of dollars to gain this knowledge. How is it fair for me to give that to you for free?
Yes, and at first, I'll be honest, at first it seemed like a lot of money, but now it's not. It was worth it. It paid back almost instantly.
Yeah, every coaching program that I have invested in, we have had at least a double ROI on it, and that's playing it very safely.
I feel that way about my CRM. The way that I have more control of my business and my numbers, we've eliminated all this manual work. It paid for itself. Payroll used to take me a full day. And again, that circles
Same.
back to that question of what is my hourly rate? If you do the math on that, weekly payroll, right? If it took me a full day to do payroll, I gained 4 days back in a month if it's a 4 week
Every
month,
month.
just
Right.
by switching to a more robust system. And I don't have to worry about all these add-ons. I don't need something to tell me how to quote a job. I don't need something to do my email campaigns. You name it, it's an all-in-one program. I got text blasting, you name it. But I made that investment. I didn't choose something for pennies and then get all these add-ons that don't talk to each other, and then now I have all this manual work. What is your hourly rate? Let's stop and
Right.
ask that.
Right. Well, you hear the same thing with people, talking about hiring a recruiting software or something like that. When you sit down and you think about how exhausting it is to go through all of the applications that come through on Indeed, because I guarantee you every job you put out there is going to get hundreds of applications.
We just posted our stats yesterday because we took our trainers out to celebrate them. November 1st, since November 1st, we have received over 5,400 applications. 5,000.
So,
I could not imagine doing that and not having a recruiting company to filter through that. Do you want to know how many interviews out of the 5,400 we did?
wait, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Can I just stop you right there? If
Yeah.
you take five,
It was 54 something. Yeah.
so say every one of them took you a minute, right, to go through. So that's times 60. 3,000 minutes.
Divide that by 60 to see how many hours.
Five that well does 5,000 hours. 5,000 hours.
Yeah. So,
So
and
we're super smart and can do math very quickly.
we can
In case you
spell,
didn't,
we could do math. We're just
we
really
have
checking the
all the
boxes.
knowledges. We have all of the knowledges.
So if we could do it, you could do it. But also with that, we only interviewed 744 people. And then we offered the position at 18. A few of them like ghosted us, orientation, you name it. A few of them started training. We realized they weren't a good fit because we have a clear outline of what we're looking for. So we cut them loose early. But out of all of those 5,400 applications, we have 7 that have stuck that are doing amazing.
Right. So again, let me do the math again. So 5,000 applications, and you said how many actually made it through?
7. It's
No, I mean to interview.
oh, 744.
744. So based on the math we did just a minute ago, which I'm sure is spot on because we're geniuses here, that's 4,200 hours, right?
Yeah. No.
Check my math.
What are you trying to what formula are you doing?
So if you do 5,000 times a minute, right?
So I'll say 13%, about 14% of the people that applied made it through for an interview.
Maybe we just need to cut that whole part out. But what I was trying to point at is like the amount
It's
of people
staying.
that did, okay, that's fine. The amount of people that didn't make it through, you still would have had to spend time going through all of those applications.
Absolutely.
That those 4,300 applications, you would have had to manually go through to get down to the 7 that made it.
Yeah, we're not doing all that. But what is my hourly rate? First off, I would have never appealed to enough people to get 5,400 applicants on my own.
Correct.
And then by the time I was able to make it through that many, I would have already lost them.
Absolutely,
Right?
because they need a job now.
I feel like this is its own episode.
It is. Sorry, we have digressed. I apologize.
You're fine.
But that's what we do.
Yeah,
We
we
both
can
have
get
a-
off topic so easy, especially when it's about business and something that we've proved
Right.
to ourselves, you know?
Right. So quickly, what I wanted to say was one of the books, courses, whatever, that has really affected the way that I do business because I feel like I have implemented it is Extreme Ownership. It's by Jocko Willink, and I can't remember the co-author on that. But the whole book, I will give you the Cliff Notes version, but I still expect you to read it, is at the end of the day, everything that happens in your business falls back on you because of your leadership. It is taking extreme ownership of everything that you do. So if my team is failing, where have I failed them in how I have led them? So if I'm not willing to take that on, then we're never going to be better. Do you have a book that really resonated with you?
Yeah, I
that you
have
put
a
into
few,
practice?
but I will say a lot I find repeating to myself is from Leaders Eat Last
Yeah, I haven't read that one yet.
and the compound effect. But Leaders Eat Last, I find
Okay.
myself so when I find something that I want to micromanage or like overcomplicate the process, I just remember the story in the book where he's talking about the storage closet, or it's like an admin closet. It sounds like where they kept supplies or something.
Mhm.
And it was open, but then their supply costs got out of control or something. So they locked it. I think that's what happened. So they locked it. And when they locked it, it's like their morale went down, which means their production went down. And then it wasn't until this other guy came in, he took over. And when he took over, he was like, leave it unlocked because it was why are you trusting some people to go in there but not everybody? So it's like little things like that. That is a super Cliff Notes version of a pretty like a whole chapter. But at the end of it, it was when is micromanaging actually hurting you? So it's giving people room to make mistakes, right? That was the lesson that I got, and not affecting the morale and the culture along the way.
Yeah. Nope, I love that. Sounds like a good book. I need to put that one on my list. I've not read that one yet.
So, what is a hilarious or embarrassing business mistake related to not following your own advice?
I'm trying to think. I know I have made lots of mistakes along the way. I am not perfect by any means. I think so. I think for me, it's is not acting when I know the answer. So like if I have somebody who's working for me and I know that they are a bad seed, not making that call right away. Or it's not a hilarious story, but for me it's that I should trust myself more to make those decisions. I've been given all of the systems, I see all of the signs, I know what to look for, and I ignore them until usually it's too late.
Mine was telling everybody to inspect what they expect, but then hiring another bookkeeper and not inspecting it. And then 6 months later, finding out that I wasted thousands of dollars for what I
Ugh.
thought was cleanup from the other one. And then that's the one that had me preaching, inspect what you expect. And then I didn't. And boom, thousands. It was a very expensive lesson.
So if anything, if you get nothing else out of this podcast, is that I hope that you learn from our very expensive lessons because we have made some very, very expensive lessons.
Yes, we've already made
Mistakes.
the mistakes.
Whatever. Yes. And I agree with you on the bookkeeper thing, but that is an absolute golden nugget is to inspect what you are expecting.
I think we
regardless of what
actually
it
have
is.
that broken down for 2 different episodes.
I think so. You're going to hear all about it.
Yeah. But go ahead. What are the final thoughts here?
Yeah, so moral of the story is if you invest in knowledge, you've got to use it. Like what I just can't see throwing thousands and thousands of dollars away on coaching or all of the books that you buy or everything if you're not going to use it. Watch the modules, read the books, actually implementing, because that's what's going to make the difference between you staying stuck and scaling up.
Yes. And when you do those things, ask questions along the way. That is welcome. But if you've been sitting on a course or a training, anything that you've paid for, go watch it. Consider this your friendly but slightly aggressive reminder.
And if you have listened this far and not gotten completely offended and you love what we're saying, go ahead and subscribe, follow everywhere we are. We're on Facebook. Everything is under Our Business Shenanigans. Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, everywhere that it can possibly be. And on any of those places, share your thoughts with us. What's the best advice you ignored and then later regretted? Drop it in the comments or DM us, or you can email us. It's just ourbusinessshenanigans@gmail.com. We would love to hear about it. If you've got questions, let us know and we try to answer them on air like we're radio stars.
Everybody just wants to be us so bad.
My gosh,
All
we
right.
sound so narcissistic and
We're not.
we're not. I promise. I promise. We're super down to earth.
We're going to get in the messages later and be like, do you think they're mad at us?
Right? We will overanalyze every single email that you give us and we'll be like, "Oh my gosh, did we say something wrong? Are they going to hate us now?" I'm 100% going to do that after this episode, by the way.
If you're offended, drop an angry face emoji in the comments.
Right? Oh my
Please.
god, that's triggering.
So that we know if
That's
we
too
actually
triggering.
made anybody upset.
Too triggering.
And then
But
I'll
no,
let it keep me up all night. So
Right. So that is my final thought. Just so you know, this podcast, this episode took a whole lot of courage because I'm the type of person that wants everybody to be happy and wants everything even keel.
people
But I
pleaser.
feel like I am a people pleaser and I feel like we touched on some things that are probably going to, not feel so great for some people.
You're going to ruffle some feathers. But
It is, but
comes
it's
from
all
a
out
place
of love.
Yes.
It really does.
It comes from a place of love because if we didn't think that you could do it, we wouldn't have even wasted our time doing this episode for you. So thank you for tuning in. If you made it this far, we'll see you next week.
Yeah. Bye, guys.